Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel and reading Think and Grow Rich. We are reading chapter 2, and we're gonna get 13 pages. And I did chapter 1 last night, so y'all check that video last night. Then go into chapter 2, the one I'm doing today, actually, this evening. So tomorrow, each day this week, I'm gonna do all the chapters till we read the whole book. So let's get into chapter 2. It's called Desire, the starting point of all achievement, the first step to riches. When Edwin C. Barnes climbed down from the freight train in Orange, New Jersey, he may have resembled a tramp, but his thoughts were those of a king. As he made his way to Thomas A. Edison's office, his mind was at work. He saw himself standing in Edison's presence. He heard himself asking Mr. Edison for the opportunity to carry out the one consuming obsession of his life, a burning desire to become the business associate of the great inventor. Barnes' desire was not a hope. It was not a wish. It was a keen, pulsating desire which transcended everything else. It was definite. The desire was not new when he approached Edison. It had been Barnes' dominating desire for a long time. In the beginning, when the desire first appeared in his mind, it may have been, probably was, only a wish. But it was no mere wish when he appeared before Edison with it. A few years later, Edwin C. Barnes again stood before Edison in the same office where he first met the inventor. This time, his desire had been translated into reality. He was in business with Edison. The dominating dream of his life had become a reality. Today, people who know Barnes envy him because of the break life yielded him. They see him in the days of his triumph without taking the trouble to investigate the cause of his success. Barnes succeeded because he chose a definite goal and placed all his energy, all his willpower, and all his effort into achieving that goal. He did not become the partner of Edison the day he arrived. He was content to start in the most meaningful work as long as it provided an opportunity to take even one step towards his cherished goal. 5 years passed before the chance he had been seeking made his appearance. During all these years, not one ray of hope, not one promise or attainment of his desires had been held out to him. To everyone except him, he appeared only another cog in the Edison business wheel. But in his own mind, he was the partner of Edison every minute of the time, from the very day they first went to work there. It is a remarkable illustration of the power of a definite desire. Barnes won his goal because he wanted to be a business associate of Mr. Edison more than he wanted anything else. He created a plan by which to attain that purpose, but he burned all bridges behind him. He stood by his desire until it became the dominant obsession of his life and finally a fact. When he went to Orange, he did not say to himself, I will try to introduce Edison to give me a job of some sort. He said, I will see Edison and put him on notice that I have come to go into business with him. He did not say, I will work there for a few months, and if I get no encouragement, I will quit and get a job somewhere else. He did say, I will start anywhere. I will do anything Edison tells me to do. Before I am through, I will be his associate. He did not say, I will keep my eyes open for another opportunity in case I fail to get what I want in the Edison organization. He said, there is but one thing in the world I am determined to have, and that is a business association with Thomas A. Edison. I will burn all bridges behind me and stake my entire fortune on my ability to get what I want. He left himself no possible way of retreat. He had to win or perish. That is all there is to the Barnes story of success. A long while ago, a great warrior had to make a decision which ensured his success on the battlefield. He was about to send his army against a powerful foe who may outnumber his own. He loaded his soldiers onto a boat, sailed to the enemy country, unloaded soldiers and equipment, then gave the order to burn the ship that had carried him. Addressing his men before the first battle, he said, you see the boats going up in smoke? That means we cannot leave those shores alive unless we win. We had no choice. We win or we perish. They won. Every person who wins in any undertaking must be willing to burn his ship, cut all sources of retreat. Only by so doing can one be assured of maintaining the state of mind known as burning desire to win, essential to success. The morning after the great Chicago fire, a group of merchants stood on State Street, looking at the smoking remains of what has been their stores. They went into a conference to decide if they tried to rebuild or leave Chicago and start over in a more promising part of the country. They reached a decision, all except one, to leave Chicago. The merchant who decided to stay and rebuild pointed a finger at the remains of his store and said, "Gentlemen, on that very spot I will build the world's greatest store. No matter how many times it may burn down, the store was built. It stands there today, a towering monument to the power of that state of mind known as a burning desire." The easy thing for Marshall Fields to have done has been exactly his fellow merchants did. When the going was hard and the future looked dismantled, they pulled up and went where the going seemed easier. Mark well this difference between Marshall Field and the other merchants, because it is the same difference that distinguishes Edward C. Barnes from thousands of other young men who had worked in Edison organization. It is the same difference that distinguishes particularly all who succeed from those who fail. Every human being who understands the purpose of money wishes for it. Wishing would not bring wishes, but desiring riches with a state of mind that becomes an obsession. Then planning definite ways and means to acquire riches and backing those planned with persistence, but does not recognize failure, will bring riches. The method by which desire for riches can be transmuted into financial equivalent consists of 6 definite practical steps. Number 1, fixing your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It is not sufficient merely to say, "I want plenty of money." Be definite as to amount. There is a psychological reason for definitions which will be described in a subsequent chapter. Step number 2, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you desire. There is no such reality as something for nothing. Step number 3, establish a definite date when you intend to possess the money you desire. Step number 4, create a definite plan for carrying out your desire. Begin at once, whether you are ready or not, to put this plan into action. Step number 5, write a clear, concise statement of the amount of money you intend to acquire. Name the time limit for its acquisition. State what you intend to give in return for the money and describe clearly the plan through which you intend to accumulate it. Step number 6, read your written statement out loud twice daily, once just before retiring at night and once after rising in the morning. As you read, see, and feel, and believe in yourself already in possession of the money. It is important that you follow the instructions described in these 6 steps. It is easily important that you observe and follow the instruction in the 6th paragraph. You may complain that it is impossible for you to see yourself in possession of money before you actually have it. Here is where a burning desire will come to your aid. If you truly desire money too keenly that your desire is obsession, you will have no difficulty in convincing yourself that you will acquire it. The objection is to want money and to become so determined to have it that you convince yourself you will have it. Only those who become money conscious ever accumulate great riches. Money consciousness mean that the mind has become so thoroughly saturated with desire for money that one can see oneself already in possession of it. To those who have not been schooled in the working principle of the human mind, these instructions may appear impractical. It may be helpful to all who fail to recognize the soundness of the 6 steps. To know that the information they convey was received from Andrew Carnegie, who began as an ordinary laborer in a steel mill. Despite his humble beginnings, Carnegie, I believe I said it right, managed to make these principles yield him a fortune of considerably more than $100 million. It may be of further help to know that the 6 steps recommended there were carefully scrutinized by Thomas A. Edison. He placed his stamp of approval upon them as being not only the step essential for the accumulation of money, but also for the attainment of any definite goal. The steps call for no hard labor. They call for no sacrifice. They do not require one to become ridiculous or credulous. To apply them call for no great amount of education. But the successful application of these 6 steps does not call for significant imagination to enable one to see and to understand. The accumulation of money cannot be left to chance, good fortune, and luck. One must realize that all who have accumulated great fortune first did a certain amount of dreaming, hoping, wishing, desiring, and planning before they acquired money. You may as well know also that every great leader from the dawn of civilization down to the present was a dreamer. If you do not see great riches in your imagination, you will never see them in your bank balance. Never has been there so great an opportunity for practical dreamers as now existed. We who are in this race for riches should be encouraged to know this dynamic world in which we live in is demanding new ideas, new ways of doing things, new leaders, new inventions, new methods of teaching, new methods of marketing, new books, new literature, new appliances, new applications for computers, new cures for diseases, and new approach to every aspect of business and life. Behind this demand for new and better things, there is one quality one must possess to win. That is the definition of purpose, the knowledge of what one wants, and a burning desire to possess it. To accomplish this requires practical dreamer who can and will put their dream into action. The practical dreamer has always been, always will be, the pattern maker of civilization. We who desire to accumulate riches shall remember that the real leaders of the world have always been people who harness and put in practical use the intangible, unseen forces of unborn opportunity. They have converted these forces or impulses of thought into skyscrapers, cities, factories, airplanes, cars, better healthcare, and every form of convenience that make life more pleasant. Tolerance and an open mind are practical necessities for the dreamer of today. Those who are afraid of new ideas are doomed before they start. Never has been a time more favorable to pioneer than the present. There is a vast business, financial, and industrial world to be remodeled and redirected remolded and redirected along new and better lines. In planning to acquire your share of the riches, let no one influence you to scorn the dreamer. To win the big stakes in this ever-changing world, you must catch the spirit of the great pioneers of the past, whose dreams have given to civilizations all that it has valued. The spirit will serve as lifeblood of our society. Your opportunity and mine to develop markets, our talent, and let us not forget Columbus' dream of an unknown world, staked his life on existence such as a word, and discovered it. Copernicus, the great, if I said that right, the great astronomer, dreamed of a multiplicity of words and revealed them. No one denounced him as impractical after he had triumphed. Instead, the world worshipped him at his shrine, thus proving once there that success requires no apologies, failure permit no alibis. If the thing you wish to do is right and you believe in it, go ahead and do it. Put your dream across and never mind what they say. If they meet with temporary defeat for a day perhaps, do not know that every failure brings with the seed of equivalent success. Henry Ford, poor and uneducated, dreamed of a horseless carriage. He went to work with tools he possessed without waiting for opportunity to favor him. Now evidence of his dream built the entire earth. He has more wheels into he put more wheels into operation than any man ever lived because he was not afraid to back his dream. Thomas Edison dreamed of a lamp that could be operated by electricity. Despite more than 10,000 failures, he stood by that dream until he made it physical reality. Practical dreamers do not quit. Lincoln dreamed of freedom for the black slave, put his dream into action, and barely missed living to see a united and South translate his dream to reality. The Wright brothers dreamed of a machine that would fly through the air. Now one may see evidence all over the world they dreamed soundly. Macaroni, if I said it right, dreamed of a system of harnessing the intangible forces of the ether. Evidence that he did not dream in vain may be found in every radio, TV, and cell phone in the world. Moreover, Macaronian dream brought the humblest gambling and the most stately miner house side by side. It made the people of every nation on earth next door neighbor by creating a medium where news, information, and entertainment can instantly be disseminated throughout the world. It may interest you to know that Macaronian's friends had taken him into custody and examined his psychological hospital, where he announced he had discovered a principle through which he could send messages through the air without the aid of wires or direct physical means of communication. The dreamers of the day fare better. The world has become accustomed to new discoveries. Indeed, it has shown a willingness to reward the dreamer who give the world a new idea. Ray Kroc is another good example of someone who made his dream true. Kroc was a salesman of milkshake mixers. Most of his customers, restaurant diners, purchased 1 or 2 units. When he received an order for 8 mixers from a small outlet in San Bernardo, California, he decided to visit them and see how they could sell so many shakes. It was the busiest restaurant he ever seen. The owner, the McDonald brothers, offered a very limited menu: hamburgers, cheeseburgers, French fries, shakes, and soft drinks, all at the lowest price in the area. Kroc saw an opportunity. If he could open a chain of these restaurant, even as productive and prosperous as this, money would flow in. He proposed the idea to the McDonald's brothers and agreed to implement it. Within a few years, McDonald's not only became the top-selling food outlet in the country, but created the fast food industry. Kroc later brought out the McDonald's brothers and expanded the business to an international phenomenon, making him one of the richest men of his time. The world is filled with abundance of opportunity, which the dreamers of the past never knew. A burning desire to be and do is the strongest point from which the dreamer must take off. Dreams are not born of indifference, laziness, or lack of ambition. The world no longer scoffs at dreamers, nor calls them impractical. Remember, too, that all who succeed in life get off to a bad start and pass through many heartbreak struggles before they arrive. The turning point in the lives of those who succeed usually come out in a moment of some crisis, through which they are introduced to their other selves. John Bunyan wrote The Pilgrim's Progress after he had been confined in prison and sorely punished because of his religious views. O. Henry discovered that the genius that slept within his brain after he had met with great misfortune was confined in a prison cell in Columbus, Ohio. Being forced through misfortune to become acquainted with his other self, had to use his imagination. He discovered himself to be a great author instead of a miserable criminal and outcast. Strange and varied are the way of life, and stranger still are the way of infinite intelligence, through which people are sometimes forced to undergo all sorts of punishment before discovering their own brains and their own capacity to create useful ideas through imagination. Edison, the world's greatest investor in science, was part-time telegram operator. He failed innumerable times before he was driven finally to discover of the genius that slept within his brain. Charles Dickens began by pasting labels on the blackening poets. The tragedy of his first love penetrated the depth of his soul and converted him into one of the world's truly great authors. Disappointment over love affairs generally has the effect of driving people to drink and ruin. This is because most people never learn the art of transmuting their strongest emotions into a dream of a constructed nature. Helen Keller became deaf, dumb, and blind shortly after birth. Despite her great misfortune, her name is written indelibly in the pages of history of the great. Her entire life served as evidence that no one is ever defeated until defeat had been accepted as a reality. Robert Burns was an illiterate country lad. He was cursed by poverty and grew up to be a drunkard. The world made better for his having lived because he clothed beautiful thoughts in poetry, thereby plucking a thorn and planting a rose in its place. Booker T. Washington was born in slavery, handicapped by race and color, because he was tolerant, had an open mind at all times, on all subjects, and was a dreamer. He left his impress for good on an entire race. Beethoven was deaf, Milton was blind, but their names will last as long as they endure because they translated their dream to organized thoughts. Arnold Schwarzenegger is another person who converted his desire into action and achieved. He first came into the public eyes as Mr. Universe, a glorified weightlifter. But Schwarzenegger was not a typical muscle man. He was a man with dreams and goals. He achieved it by becoming a wealthy businessman, one of the highest paid movie actors, and eventually governor of California. Born and raised in Austria, as a child he began training as a weightlifter at 18. He won his first bodybuilding contest and the first of 5 consecutive Mr. Universe titles. He immigrated to the United States and continued winning similar contests. Although he had accomplished more than any person in the art of bodybuilding, it was no longer a challenge. He saw other areas where he could use his talent. His training in physical development taught him there was a need for knowledge about physical fitness. He had that knowledge and wanted to share it. He wrote an autobiography, honored the education of bodybuilding, which became a bestseller. He followed with a book on bodybuilding for women, showing female readers how to use weight training to get in shape. This led to the creation of a mail-order exercise business and a company to produce bodybuilding events. These businesses started him on the road to business success. His next goal was to become a movie star. Even before he had secured his first movie role, he set himself a goal to be as big in movies as he was in bodybuilding. After turning down minor roles, his persistence paid off, which he was cast to lead in Conan the Barbarian. This led to a series of action films that made him one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood. Success in movies did not make Schwarzenegger complaints. He set new goals for himself. In time of the world of business, he invested in real estate. created a restaurant chain, and became actively involved in other enterprises and became a multi-millionaire. As his success mounted, however, he added that what became his dream goal to serve the community. He traveled around the country to promote health and fitness for young. He went into inner cities and inspired kids to eschew violence and crime, to say no to drugs, guns, and gangs, and yes to education. He was taking an active leadership role in several organizations dedicated to physical fitness and health. In 2003, Schwarzenegger threw his hat into the ring and was overwhelmingly elected as the new governor of California. You can learn much from this man. In setting goals, you are not limited to any one area. Schwarzenegger could have limited his future to bodybuilding and become quite a success, but he dreamed of much more. Set higher goals, strove to reach them. He learned from his successors and adapted his knowledge in other aspects of his life. Like Schwarzenegger, do not be discouraged by criticism. Critics belittled his acting ability in his first film, but he was not dissuaded and pursued his goal to become one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood. That's wow. Before passing to the next chapter, kindle anew in your mind the fire of hope, faith, courage, and tolerance. If you have these states of mind and a working knowledge of the principle described, all else that you need will come to you when you're ready for it. Let Emerson state the thought in these words: every proverb, every book, every byword that belongs to thee for aid and comfort shall surely come home through open or unwinding passages. Every friend who they not fantastic will, but the great and tender soul thee craving, shall lock thee in his embrace. There is a difference between wishing for a thing and becoming ready to receive it. No one is ready for a thing until he believes he can acquire it. The state of mind must be belief, not mere hope or wish. Open-mindedness is essential for beliefs. Closed minds do not inspire faith, courage, or belief. Remember, no more effort is required to aim high in life. To demand abundance and prosperity, then, is required to accept misery and poverty. A great poet had correctly stated this universal truth through these lines: I bargain with life for a penny, and life will pay no more. However, I beg at evening when I count my sanctuary store. For life is just an employer. You give what you ask for, but once you get accepted wages, why must bear the task? I work for a mental hire, only to learn dismay that any wage I ask for life will be willingly paid. Mary Kay Ash, the founder of Mary Kay Cosmetics, attributed her success to the development of self-confidence and faith in herself and all the people of her vast organization, which now consists of more than 250,000 independent beauty consultants worldwide. Her sales career began 25 years later when she joined Stanley Home Products. She often complimented that she was not all as successful during her first year and was ready to give up. This changed when she attended her first Stanley sales seminar. She reported, "There I saw this tall, Seaval, pretty, successful woman crowned queen as a reward for being the best in the company contest. I determined to be that queen the following year, which seemed impossible. However, I decided to go up and talk to the president and tell him that I intended to be queen next year. Miss Beveridge didn't laugh at me, but looked me in the eyes, held my hand, and said, 'Somehow I think you will.' Those 5 words drove me, and the next year I was queen." Mary Kay preached and practiced that the first step in achieving success is to firmly believe that you are an excellent person who deserves success. In an article in Personal Excellence, she suggested some exercises that could help create your image of excellence and begin to establish an atmosphere of success in your life. Here are some of her suggestions. Imagine yourself successful. Always picture yourself successful. Visualize the person you desire to become. Set aside time each day to be alone, undisturbed. Get comfortable and relax. Close your eyes and concentrate on your desire and goal. Set yourself in this new environment capable and self-confidence. Reflect on your past successes. Every success, be it large or small, is proof that you are capable of achieving more success. Celebrate each success you can recall it when you begin to lose faith in yourself. Set definite goals. Have a clear direction of where you want to go. Be aware when you begin to deviate from these goals and take imminent correction action. Respond positively to life. Develop a positive self-image. Your image, your reaction to life, and your decision, and completely within your control. Desire outwits Mother Nature. As a fitting climax to this chapter, I wish to introduce one of the most unusual people I have ever known. I first saw him as a few minutes before he was born. He came into the world without any physical signs of ear, and the doctor admitted, when pressed for opinion, that the child might be deaf and mute for life. I challenged the doctor's opinion. I had the right to do so. I was the child's father. I too reached a decision and rendered an opinion, but I expressed the opinion silently in the secrecy of my own heart. I decided that my son would hear and speak. Nature could send me a child without ear, but nature could not induce me to accept the reality of affliction. In my own mind, I knew that my son would hear and speak. How? I was sure there must be a way, and I knew I would find it. I thought of the words of the immortal Emerson. The whole course of things go to teacher's face. We need to obey. There is a guidance for each of us, and lo, we listening. We shall hear the right words. The right word, desire, more than anything else. I desired that my son should not be deaf mute. From that desire, I never receded, not for a second. Many years previous, I had written, our only limitation are those we set up in our own mind. For the first time, I wondered if that statement was true. Lying on the bed in front of me was my newly born child without the natural equipment of hearing. Even though he might hear and speak, he was obviously disfigured for life. Surely this was a limitation which that child had not set up in his own mind. What could I do about it? Somehow I found a way to transplant into my child's mind my own burning desire for ways and means of conveying sounds to his brain without the aid of ears. As soon as the child was old enough to cooperate, I would fill his mind so completely with a burning desire to hear that nature would, by a method of her own, translate into physical reality. All this thinking took place in my own mind. I spoke of it to no one. Every day I renewed the pledge I had made to myself not to accept a deaf mute for his son. As he grew older and began to take notice of things around him, he observed that he had a slight degree of hearing. When he reached the age where children usually begin to talk, he made no attempt to speak. He could tell by his action that he could hear certain sound lightly. That was all I wanted to know. I was convinced that if he could hear even slightly, he might develop still greater hearing capacity. Then something happened which gave me hope. It came from an entirely unexpected source. We bought a record player. When the child heard the music for the first time, he went to ecstasy, if I said it right, ecstasy, and promptly appropriated the machine. He soon showed a preference for certain records. Among them, It's a Long Way to Tipperary. On one occasion, he played that piece over and over for almost 2 hours, standing in front of the record player with his teeth clamped on the edge of the case. The significance of this self-formed habit of his did not become clear until years later, for he never heard of the principle of bone conduction of sound at the time. Shortly after he appropriated the record player, I discovered that he could hear me quite clearly when I spoke with my lips, touching his mastoid bone behind the ear or at the base of the brain. These discoveries placed in my possession the necessary medium by which I began to translate into reality my burning desire to help my son develop hearing and speech. By that time, he was making stabs at certain words. The outlook was far from encouraging, but desire backed by faith knows no such word as impossible. Having determined that he could hear the sound of my voice plainly, I began immediately to transfer to his mind the desire to hear and speak. I soon discovered that the child enjoyed bedtime stories, so I went to work, creating stories designed to develop in him self-reliance, imagination, and keen desire to hear and to be normal. There was a story in particular which I emphasized by giving a new dramatic coloring each time it was told. It was designed to plant in his mind the thought of the appreciation. It was not a liability, but an asset of great value. Despite the fact that all philosophy had examined clearly indicated that every adversity brings with it the seed of equivalent advantage. I must confess that I had not the slightest idea how this affliction could ever become an accident. However, I continued my practice of wrapping that philosophy in bedtime stories, hoping the time would come when he would find some plan by which his handicap could be more to serve some useful purpose. Reason told me plainly that there was no adequate compensation for the lack of ears and natural hearing equipment. Despite the desire backed by faith pushed reason aside and inspired me to carry on. As I analyzed the experience in retrospect, I could see now that my son's faith in me had much to do with the astounding results. He did not question anything I told him. I sold him the idea that he had a distinct advantage over his older brother and that this advantage will reflect itself in many years. For example, teachers in schools will observe that he had no ears, and because of this, they will show him special attention and treat him with extraordinary kindness. They always did. His mother saw that by visiting teachers and arranging with them to give the child the extra attention necessary. I sold him the idea too, that when he became old enough to sell a newspaper, his older brother had already become a newspaper merchant. He would have a big advantage over his brother, as people may pay him extra money for his wares because they could see he was a bright, industrious boy, despite the fact he had no ears. We noticed that gradually the child hearing was improving. Moreover, he had not the slightest tendency to self-conscious because of his affliction. He was about 7. He showed the first evidence that our methods of serving his mind were bearing fruit. For several months he begged for the privilege of selling newspaper, but his mother would not give her consent. She was afraid that his deafness made it unsafe for him to go on the street alone. Finally, he took matters in his own hand. One afternoon, when he was left at home with the servants, he climbed through the kitchen window, shunned to the ground, and set out on his own. He borrowed 6 cents in capital from the neighborhood shoemakers, invested in paper, sold out, reinvested, and kept repeating until late in the evening. After balancing his amount and paying back the 6 cents he had borrowed from his banker, he had a net profit of 42 cents. When we got home that night, we found him in bed asleep with money tightly clenched in his hand. His mother opened his hand, removed the coin, and cried, of all things. Crying over her son's first victory just seemed inappropriate. My reaction was reversed. I laughed heartily, for I knew that my endeavor to plant the child's mind an attitude of faith in himself had been successful. His mother saw in his first business adventures a little deaf boy who had gone out into the streets, had risked his life to earn money. I saw a brave, ambitious, self-reliant little businessman whose stock in himself had increased 100% because he had gone into business on his own initiative and had won. The transaction pleased me because I knew he had given the evidence of a trait, a resourcefulness that would go with him all his life. That's very deep. That's a good book. Later events proved this to be true. When his older brother wanted something, he would lie down on the floor, kick his feet in the air, and cry for it, and get it. When the little deaf boy wanted something, he would plan a way to earn the money, then buy it for himself. Still follow that plan. Truly, my own son had taught me that handicap can be converted into stepping stones on which one may climb towards some worthy goal, unless they are accepted as obstacles and used as alibis. The little deaf boy went through the grades, high school and college, without being able to hear his teachers, except when they shouted loudly at close range. He did not go to a school for the deaf. He would not permit himself to learn sign language. He was determined that he shall live a normal life and associate with normal children. He stood by that decision, although it cost him many heated debates with school officials. While he was in high school, he tried an electrical hearing aid, but it was no value to him because we believe this was due to a condition that was disclosed when the child was 6. Dr. J. Gordon, Wilson of Chicago, operated on one side of the boy's head, discovered there was no side of natural hearing equipment. During his last week in college, 18 years after the operation, something happened which marked the most important turning point in his life. Throughout, he seemed to be mere chance. He came into possession of another electrical hearing device, which was sent to him on trial. He was slow about testing to do his disappointment with the similar device. Finally, he picked the instrument up and more or less carefully placed it on his head, hooked up the battery, and lo, as if by a stroke of magic, his lifelong desire for normal hearing became a reality. For the first time in his life, he heard practically as well as any person with normal hearing. God moved in mysterious ways, his wonder to perform. Overjoyed because of the changed world that had been brought to him through his hearing device, he rushed to the telephone, called his mother, and heard her voice perfectly. The next day, he plainly heard the voice of professors and class for the first time in his life. He heard the radio, he heard the cinema. For the first time in his life, he could converse freely with other people without having them to speak loud. Truly, he had come into possession of a changed world. He had refused to accept nature's error, and by persistent desire, he had introduced nature to correct that error through the only practical means available. Desire had commenced to pay dividends, but the victory was not yet complete. The boy still had to find a definite and practical way to convert his handicap into equivalent asset. Hardly realizing the significance of what had been accomplished and intoxicated with the joy of his newly discovered world of sound, he wrote a letter to the manufacturer of the hearing aid. He was very excited, describing his experience. Sometime in his letter, some things perhaps was not written on the line, but between them, caused to come to invite him to New York. When he arrived, he was escorted through the factory while talking with the chief engineer, telling him about his change were a hunch, an ideal, or inspiration. Call it what you wish, flashed into his mind. It was the impulse of thoughts which converted his affliction into an asset destined to pay dividends in both money and happiness to thousands of all time to come. The sum and substance of that impulse of thought was this. It occurred to him that he might be help to the millions of deaf people who go through life without the benefit of the hearing devices. If he could find a way to tell them the story of his change word, then and there he reached a decision to devote the remainder of his life to providing a useful service to the hard of hearing. For an entire month, he carried out intensive research. He analyzed the entire marketing system of the manufacturer of the hearing device and created ways and means of communicating with the hard of hearing all over the world for the purpose of sharing with them his newly discovered change word. When this was done, he wrote a 2-year plan based upon his findings. On presenting the plan to the company, he was instantly given a position for the purpose of carrying out his ambition. Little did he dream, when he went to work, that he was destined to bring hope and practical relief to thousands of deaf people who, without his help, would have been doomed forever to deaf mutism. Shortly after he became associated with the manufacturer of his hearing aid, he invited me to attend a class conducted by his company for the purpose of teaching deaf mute to hear and speak. I had never heard of such a form of education. Therefore, I visited the class, skeptical but hopeful that my time would not be entirely wasted. Here I saw a demonstration that gave me a greatly enlarged vision of what I had done to arouse and keep alive in my son's mind the desire for normal hearing. I saw deaf mutes actually being taught to hear and speak through application of the self-same principle I had used more than 20 years previously in saving my son's life from deaf mutism. Thus, throughout some strange turn of will of fate, my son Blair and I were destined to aid in correcting deaf mutism for those as yet unborn. There is no doubt in my mind that Blair would have been a deaf mute all his life if his mother and I not managed to shape his mind as we did. When Blair was an adult, Dr. Ivan Voorhees, a noted specialist on such cases, examined him thoroughly. He was astounded when he learned how well my son hears, speaks, and said his examination indicated that theoretically the boy should not be able to hear at all, but the lad does hear despite the fact that x-ray pictures showed there was no opening in his skull whatsoever from where his ears should be to the brain. When I planted in his mind the desire to hear and talk and live a normal person, there went with the impulse some strange influence which caused nature to become a bridge builder and span the gulf of silence between his brain and the outer world by some means which the keenest medical specialist had not been able to interpret. It would be scarlet for me to even conjure as how nature performed this miracle. It would be unforgivable if I neglected to tell the world as much I knew of the humble part I assume in a strange experience. It is my duty and privilege to say I believe, and not without reason, that nothing is possible to the person who backed desire with enduring faith. I have no doubt that a burning desire was deviously ways of transmuting himself into a physical equivalent. Blair desired normal hearing. Now he has it. He was born with a handicap, which might easily have sent one of his less defined desires to the street with a bundle of pencils and a tin cup. That handicap now promised to serve as a medium by which he would render useful service to millions of hard of hearing, as well as to give him useful employment at adequate financial compensation for the remainder of his life. The little white lies I planted in his mind when he was a child, leading him to believe his affliction would become a great asset on which he could capitalize, had been justified. There is nothing wrong, right, or wrong with belief plus burning desire cannot make real. These qualities are free to everyone. In all my experience in dealing with men and women who had personal problems, I never handled a single case which more definitely demonstrated the power of desire. Authors sometimes make the mistake of writing a subject for which they have but superficial or very elementary knowledge. It has been my good fortune to have had the privilege of testing the soundness of the power of desire through the affliction of my own son. Perhaps with providential that the experience came as it did, but surely no one is better prepared than he to serve as an example of what happens when desire is put to rest. If Mother Nature bends to the will of desire, it is logical that mere men can defeat a burning desire. That's deep. Strange and ponderable is the power of the human mind. We do not understand the method by which it uses every circumstance, every individual, every physical thing within its reach as a means of transmuting desire into its physical counterpart. Perhaps science will uncover the truth. I planted in my son's mind the desire to hear and to speak as any normal person hears and speaks. That desire has now become a reality. I planted in his mind that desire to content his great handicap into his greatest asset. The desire had been realized. The modus operandi by which his astounding result was achieved is not hard to describe. It consists of three very definite facts. First, I mix faith with desire for normal hearing, which I pass on to my son. Second, I communicate my desire to him in every conceivable way available through persistent, continuous effort over a period of years. Third, he believed me. Several years ago, one of my business associates became ill. He became worse as time went on and finally was taken to the hospital for operation. Just before he wheeled into the operation room, I looked at him and wondered how anyone as thin and emasculated as he could possibly go through a major operation session. The doctor warned me that there was little of any chance of ever seeing him alive again, but that was the doctor's opinion. It was not the opinion of the patient. Just before he wheeled away, he whispered feebly, "Do not be disturbed, Chief. I will be out of here in a few days." The attending nurse looked at me with pity, but the patient did not come through safely. After this all, the physician said nothing was but his own desire to live saved him. He never would have pulled it through if he did not refuse to accept the possibility of death. I believe in the power of desire backed by faith because I have seen this power lift people from lowly beginnings to a place of power and wealth. I have seen it rob the grave of its victim. I have seen it serve as a medium by which people stage a comeback after having been defeated in 100 different ways. I have seen it provide my own son with a normal, happy, successful life, despite nature having sent him into a world without ears. How can one harness and use the power of desire? This has been answered through this chapter and subsequent chapter of this book. I wish to convey the thoughts of all achievement, no matter what its nature or purpose, must begin with an intense, burning desire for something definite. Through some strange and powerful principle of mental chemistry, nature wrapped up in the impulse of strong desire that something which recognizes no such word as impossible and accept no such reality as failure. And that's the end of chapter 2. That was deep. That lets you know that your mind is a very powerful tool that you are what you speak. And I understand now why people say, my parents, be careful who you hang out with. If you want to be successful, you got to hang with successful people that are successful. That way you can learn from them and build. But if you hang with people that are at the same level as you, you're going to be on that same concept. They ain't teaching you nothing, learning nothing. You need to be with people that are going to bring the best out of you. That's your friends, family, even relationships. You got to be with people that bring the best out of you and have that same positivity and faith. Because a lot of times we go to work or around jobs or other people that are always negative and got nothing good to say. Sometimes they rub on you, or sometimes your friends don't want to do something better. They stuck or they like where they living at. But sometimes you still love them, still be friends to them, but you also got to move on with your life because you want to have something different. A lot of us, we have a dream, but sometimes we have our own family will tear you down and make you feel stupid or feel dumb for thinking like that. You can't. You got to have faith in yourself and faith in God. First of all, you got to have faith in God and believe in yourself and have faith in yourself also to follow your dream, despite what people say, despite what people tell you. This book right here tell you how all the people are successful in today's society. They went through stuff. Whether easy or not, all of them it's up to us to keep going. But like I said, y'all stay tuned. Tomorrow I'll be reading chapter 3. Y'all like, comment, subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos. And check out my other videos I've done in the previous care. Y'all have a good day. Be blessed.